Good evening for another round
of the mythical Hobbit.
Or The Hobbit, as some people might just call it, by J.R. Tolkien. I got Captain Rob in here with me. How you doing, buddy?
It could also be called T.H.
Oh, The Hobbit, T.H. I get it. All right, so you ready to start listening? You got your comfy blanket? You're ready to just settle in, snooze on down, and hopefully not snooze off?
Yeah, hopefully not snooze off.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and have a seat there? And we will get started exactly in the same page. Well, a new page, technically. And, if you're wondering what the hell is he wearing. First off, since tonight is WrestleMania, this is my combination throwback Bray Wyatt with the Hawaiian shirt and the cult hat. And also, this is how I look when I go to the theme parks. I wear the wide brim hats to keep the sun out of me, and the bright Hawaiian shirt because that's my style.
So you're reading with the theme park Bob right now.
Skipper Bob?
Theme park Bob.
Theme park Bob?
So I have to skip the Bob.
That's my Simpson action figure. It would look like this. But here we go. All right, let's get into it. Last night the Hobbits were in Bilbo's house. They were talking about the adventure coming up.
And
Bilbo started
Hunger Halls.
And the Hunger Halls. All right, let's go ahead and start in. And undoubtedly, that was what brought the dragon. Dragons steal gold and jewels, from men and elves and dwarves, wherever they can find them, and they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever, unless they are killed, and never enjoy a brass ring of it. Indeed, they hardly know a good bit of work from a bad, though they usually have the good notion of the current market value. Dragons are into the stock market? And they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a little loose scale of their armor. There were lots of dragons in the north in those days, and gold was probably getting scarce up there, with the dwarves flying south or getting killed, and all the general waste and destruction that dragons make going from bad to worse. There was a most specially greedy, strong and wicked wicked worm called Smog. They refer to dragons as worms sometimes.
Okay.
Probably
just Swibbly and Slobbery.
Probably. Go with that. One day he flew up into the air and came south. The first we heard of it was a noise, like a hurricane coming from the north, and the pine trees on the mountain creaking and cracking in the wind. Some of the dwarves who happened to be outside, I was one luckily, a fine adventurous lad in those days, always wandering about, as it saved my life that day. This is Thorn talking, if you can't remember, because I haven't mentioned it at all this page. It saved my life that day. Well, from a good way off, we saw the dragon settle in our mountain in a spout of flame. Then he came down the slopes, and when he reached the woods, all they went up in fire. By that time, all the bells were ringing in Dale, and warriors were arming. The dwarves rushed out of their great gate, but there was the dragon waiting for them. None escaped that day. The river rushed up the stream, and a fog fell onto Dale. And the fog of the dragon came on them, and destroyed most of the warriors. The usual unhappy story. It was only too uncommon for those days. Then he went back and crept through the front gate, and routed out all the halls and lanes and tunnels, alleys, cellars, mansions, and passages.
So it ate everything in the Hunger Halls?
He didn't so much eat everything, he killed everyone.
And everyone died. The end.
Yeah, well, not the end, because we got a lot more book to go.
I know.
And stop interrupting!
No,
nobody interrupts the storyteller! Unless they're really bad.
I'm not a bad boy.
No, but I'm bad.
No, you're not.
Okay, thank you. After that, there were no dwarves left alive inside, and he took all their wealth for himself. Probably for that is the dragon's way, as he piled it all up in a great heap for inside, and sleeps on it for a bed. Later he used to crawl out of the great gate and come by night to Dale, and carry away people, especially maidens, to eat, until Dale was ruined, and all the people dead or gone. What goes on there now, I do not know for certain, but I suppose anyone lies near the mountain, that far edge of the long lake, nowadays. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding and cursed Smog, and there were unexpectedly joined by my father and my grandfather with signed beards. Yes, Robbie.
So, the dead people in the last page were gone, but they were already gone because they were dead, so I don't get it.
You won't read the story?
No!
Okay. You just sit back and listen, alright?
Okay.
Alright. Let's see. Later he used to crawl out, eat the dead people. I don't know for some... Okay. The few of us that were well outside sat and wept in hiding and cursed Smog, and there were unexpectedly joined by my father and grandfather with signed beards. Whatever a signed beard is. That's what it says.
Probably a beard that's signed by many people.
Well, alright. Good luck with that. Trying to sign anything. They looked very grim, but they said very little. When I asked them how they got away, they told me to hold my tongue and said that one day in proper time I should know. After that, we went away and we had to earn our living as best we could up and down the lands, often enough sinking as low as blacksmith work or even coal mining. But we have never forgotten our stolen treasure. And even now, when I will allow, we have a good bit of land by and are not so badly off. Here, Thorn stroked the gold chain around his neck. We still mean to get it back and bring our cursed home to Smog. And to bring our cursed homes to Smog, if we can. Okay. Sorry, I'm doing my best with this very illiterate literature. I have often wondered about my father's and my grandfather's escape. I see now they must have had a private side door, which only they knew about, but apparently they made a map, and I should like to know how Gandalf got hold of it, and why it did not come to me, their rightful heir. I did not get a hold of it, I was given it, said the wizard. Your grandfather Thor was killed, you remember, in the mines of Moria by Asgard the Goblin. Curse his name, yes, said Thorn. And Thran, your father, went away on the 21st of April, 100 years ago, last Thursday, and has never been seen by you since. True, said Thorn. Well, your father gave me this to give to you, and if I have chosen my time and way of handing it over, you can hardly blame me, considering the trouble I had to find you. Your father could not remember his own name when he gave me the paper, and he never told me yours. So on the whole, I think I ought to be praised and thanked. Here it is. And he handed the map to Thorn. I don't understand, said Thorn, and Bilbo felt that he would have liked to say the same. The explanation did not seem to explain. Gandalf's voice is tricky to do.
Because he's way older than you.
Because he's way older than everybody. Your grandfather, the wizard said slowly and grimly, gave the map to his son for safety before he went to the mines of Moria. Your father went away to try his luck with the map after your grandfather was killed, and lots of adventures of a most unpleasant sort he had, but he never got to the mountain. However, he got there, I do not know if he did, but I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the Necromancer. Whatever were you doing there? Asked Thorn, with a shudder, and all the dwarfs shivered. Never you mind. I was finding things out as usual, and a nasty, dangerous business it was. Even I, Gandalf, only escaped. A little high and mighty there, don't you think, there, Gandalf?
He had a little dog backstory.
Gandalf always has good intentions. Just he's a little selfish sometimes. Not often. Sometimes. I tried to save your father, but it was too late. He was witless and wandering, and had forgotten almost everything except the map and the key. We have long ago paid the goblins of Moria, said Thorn. We must give a thought to the necromancer. Don't be absurd. He is an enemy far beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together. If they could all be collected again from the four corners of the world, the one thing your father wished was for his son to read the map and use the key. The dragon and the mountain are more than big enough tasks for you. Hear, hear, said Bilbo, who accidentally said it aloud. Hear what? They all turned suddenly towards him, and he was so flustered that he answers, Hear what I've got to say. What's that? They asked. Well, I should say that you ought to go east and have a look around. After all, there is the side door, and dragons must sleep sometimes, I suppose. If you sit on the doorstep long enough, I dare say you will think of something. And well, don't you know, I think we have talked long enough for one night, if you see what I mean. What about bed, and an early start, and all that? I will give you a good breakfast before you go. Before we go, I suppose you mean, said Thorn. Aren't you the burglar? And isn't sitting on the doorstep your job, not to speak of getting inside the door? But I agree about bed and breakfast. I like 6 eggs with my ham, and starting on a journey, fried, not poached, and mind you, don't break them. Now I am hungry. Now we know what Thorn likes to eat. 6 eggs and ham.
And now we know not to break eggs.
Well, if you're gonna poach them, I guess. Sure, let's go with that. I'm not gonna. This isn't a culinary cookbook. This isn't Julia Child's. No, we need to poach the eggs and not break the yolk over the ham.
It's a Tolkien book.
It's a Tolkien book. I would love to see. That's a mashup I want to see in a heartbeat. All right, going on. After all the others had ordered their breakfasts without so much as a please, which annoyed Bilbo very much, they all got up. The Hobbit had to find room for all of them, and filled all of his spare rooms, and made beds on chairs and sofas before he got them all stowed and went to his own little bed very tired, and all not together happy. One thing he did make his mind up about was not to bother to get up very early and cook everyone's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he had now not quite so sure. And he was not now quite so sure that he was going on a journey in the morning. As he lay in bed, he could hear Thorn still humming to himself in the best bedroom next to him.
Hi-ho, hi-ho.
No, now that's a different kind of dwarf. All right, this is singing part, okay? Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to find our long forgotten gold. I think that deserves a thumbs up, don't you? He's giving thumbs up. Thank you, buddy. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and he gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he woke up. That is chapter 1.
Finn.
No. We still got like 29 more chapters to go. All right. Chapter 2, Roast Mutton. Up jumped Bilbo, and putting on his dressing gown, went into the dining room. There he saw nobody, but all the signs of a large and hurried breakfast. There was a fearful mess in the room, no piles of unwashed crocks in the kitchen. Not every pot and pan he possessed seemed to have been used. The washing up was so dismally real that Bilbo was forced to believe the party of the night before had not been part of his bad dreams, as he had rather hoped. Indeed, he was really relieved after all to think that they had gone home without him, and without bothering to wake him. But with never a thank you, he thought. And yet, in the way, he could not help but feel just trifle disappointed. The feeling surprised him. "Don't be a fool, Bilbo Baggins," he said to himself, "thinking of dragons and all the outlandish nonsense at your age." So he put on an apron, lit a fire, boiled some water, and washed up. Then he had a nice little breakfast in the kitchen before turning out the dining room.
Hey, Dad, may I say something?
What?
Remember, kids, wash your hands.
Wash your hands and your dishes, and help Mom and Dad, because they do a lot for you. So just chip in a little bit. And yes, wash your hands. Everyone should do that. Man, woman, and child. And hobbit. And dwarf. And wizard. And elf.
Dragon.
And well, if dragons are kind of filthy to begin with, so but sure, if they can wash their claws, then yes. All right.
Well, I think basically every day with the dragons hit Black Friday, so they can buy all the soap they want.
Are you going into business for yourself here? Are you taking over the show?
I'm not trying to take over
Okay.
the show,
Right.
but you guys should subscribe. That will help us.
I think subscribers are the only ones who actually watch this nonsense. All right, here we go. By that time, the sun was shining and the front door was open, letting in a warm spring breeze. Bilbo began to whistle loudly to forget about the night before. In fact, he just sitting down for a nice second breakfast in the dining room by the open window, when in walked Gandalf. "My dear fellow," said he, "whenever are you going to come? What about an early start? And here you are having breakfast, or whatever you call it. It's 10:30. They left you the message because they could not wait." "What message?" said poor Mr. Baggins in a fluster. "Great elephants," said Gandalf. "You are not at all yourself this morning. You have never dusted the mantelpiece." "What's that got to do with it? I have enough to do with washing up for 14. "If you had dusted the mantelpiece, you would have found this under the clock," said Gandalf, handing Bilbo a note, written, of course, on his own notepaper. This is what it read. "Thorn, and company to Bilbo, Burglar Bilbo greeting. For your hospitality and sincere thanks for your offer to personal assistance, our grateful acceptance. Terms cash on delivery, up to and not exceeding 1/14 of total profits, if any. All traveling expenses guaranteed in any event. Funeral expenses to be defrayed by us or our representatives, if occasion arises and the matter is not otherwise arranged for. Thinking it unnecessary to disturb your esteemed response, we have proceeded in advance to make requisite preparations, and shall await your respected person at the Green Dragon Inn, Bywater, at 11 a.m. sharp, trusting that you will be punctual. We have the honor to remain yours deeply, Thorn and Co." "That leaves you just 10 minutes. You will have to run," said Gandalf. "But," said Bilbo. "No time for it," said the wizard. "But," Bilbo said again. "No time for that either. Off you go." To the end of his days, Bilbo could never remember how he found himself outside without a hat, a walking stick, or any money, or anything that he usually took when he went out, leaving his second breakfast half finished and quite unwashed up, pushing his keys into Gandalf's hand, and running as fast as his furry feet could carry him down the lane, past the great mill, across the water, and then on for a mile or more. Very puffed he was, when he got to Bywater just on the stroke of 11, and found that he had come without a pocket handkerchief. "Bravo!" said Balin, who was standing at the inn door looking out for him. Just then, all the others came around the corner of the road from the village. Yes, Robbie?
What's a handkerchief?
Handkerchief. It's a thing you use. It's like a fancy cloth to blow your nose. You know how we use Kleenex? We use that, we throw it away because that's more sanitary. They would use a cloth, blow in it, and stick it back in their pocket.
Or Gandalf, like, he can clean it with magic.
That'd be a waste of his abilities, and you're making me lose my place.
I'm sorry.
Came on the corner. Okay. Just then, all the others came around the corner of the road from the village. They were on ponies, and each pony was slung around with all kinds of packages, bags, parcels, and paraphernalia. There was a very small pony, apparently for Bilbo. "Up you two get, and off we go," said Thorn. "I'm awfully sorry," said Bilbo, "but I have come without my hat, and I left my pocket handkerchief behind. And I haven't got any money. I didn't get your note until 10:45 to be precise." "Don't be precise," said Dwalin, "and don't worry. You will have to manage without pocket handkerchiefs and a good many other things before you get on the journey's end. As for the hat, I have a spare hood in my cloak in my luggage." That's how they all came to start, jogging off from the inn one fine morning, just before May, on laden ponies, and Bilbo was wearing a dark green hood, a little weather-stained, and dark green cloak borrowed from Dwalin. They were too large for him, and he looked rather comical. But what his father Bungo would have thought of him, I daren't think. His only comfort was that he could be mistaken for a dwarf, as he had no beard. They had not been riding very long when they came upon Gandalf, very splendid, on a white horse. He had brought a lot of pocket handkerchiefs and Bilbo's pipe and tobacco. So after the party had went along very merrily, and they told stories or sang songs as they rode forward all day, except, of course, when they stopped for meals. These didn't come quite as often as Bilbo would have liked them, but he began to feel the adventures were not so bad after all. At first they had passed through Hobbit lands, a wild, respectable country inhabited by decent folk, with good roads and an inn or two, and now and then a dwarf or a farmer assembling by on business. Then they came to lands where people spoke strangely and sang songs Bilbo never heard before. Now they had gone into the lone lands, where there was no people left, no inns, and the roads grew steadily worse. Not far off were dreary hills, rising higher and higher, with dark trees. On some of them were old castles with an evil look, as if they were gloomy, for the weather that day had taken a nasty turn. Most of it had been as good as May can be, even in merry tales, but now it was cold and wet. In the lone lands they had been obliged to camp when they could, but at least it had been dry. "To think it would be June soon," grumbled Bilbo as he splashed behind the others in very muddy tracks. It was after tea time, and it was pouring rain, and he had been all day. His hood was dripping in his eyes. His cloak was full of water. The pony was tired and stumbled on stones. The others were grumpy to talk. And I'm sure the rain has gotten into their dry clothes as well, and into the food bags, thought Bilbo. Bother burglaring and everything to do with it. I wish I was at home in my nice...
Can I stand next to you? I'm sorry for...
What do you want to say?
I just want to stand next to you.
You just want to stand next to me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not unusual. Alright, no more interruptions, okay? You can stand, you can walk, you can sit, you can listen, you can do whatever you like. Just listen and pay attention, that's all.
I'm sorry.
Alright. Bother burgling and everything to do with it. I wish I was at home in my nice hole by the fire with the kettle just beginning to sing. It was not the last time that he had wished that. Still the dwarves jogged on, but never turning around or taking any notice of the hobbit. Somewhere behind the gray clouds the sun must have gone down, for it began to get dark as they went down into a very deep river under a valley at the bottom. Wind got up and willows along its banks bent and sighed. Fortunately, the road went over an ancient stone bridge, for the river, swollen up with the rains, came rushing down the hills and mountains in the north. Miss it. Are you enjoying it so far?
I am enjoying it.
Oh, good. Good, good, good. It was nearly night when they crossed over. The wind broke up the gray clouds, and the wandering moon appeared above the hills between the flying rags. Then they stopped, and Thorn muttered something about supper. "And where shall we get a dry patch to sleep on?" Not until then did they notice Gandalf was missing. So far he had come all the way with them, never saying as if he was going in the adventure or merely keeping them company for a while. He had eaten most, talked most, and laughed the most, but now he was simply not there at all. "Just when a wizard would have been most useful, too," groaned Dori and Nori, who had shared the Hobbit's views about regular meals plenty and often. They decided in the end that they would have to camp where they were. They moved off a clump of trees and thought it was drier under them. The wind shook the rain off the leaves, and drip, drip, drip was most annoying. Also, the mischief seemed to have gotten into the fire as well. Dwarves can make a fire almost anywhere out of almost anything, wind or no wind, but they could not do it that night, not even Oin and Gloin, who were specially good at it. Then one of the ponies took fright at nothing and bolted. He got into the river before they could catch him, and before they could get him out again, Feely and Keely were nearly drowned, and all of the baggage that he was carrying washed away with him. Of course, it was mostly food, and there was mighty little left for supper, and less for breakfast. Careful. Then they all sat glum and wet and muttering, while Oin and Gloin went on trying to light the fire and quarreling about it. Bilbo was sadly reflecting that adventures were not all pony rides and May sunshine, when Balin, who was always their lookout man, said, "There's a light over there." There was a hill some way off and the trees on it, pretty thick in parts. Out of the dark mass of the trees they could now see a light shining, a reddish, comfortable-looking light. It might be a fire or torches twinkling. When they had looked at it for some while, they fell to arguing. Some said no, and some said yes. Some said they should go and see, but anything was better than little supper, less breakfast, and wet clothes all night long. I think we know what's coming up here. It's one of my favorite parts in all of literature. Others said these parts are none too well known and too near the mountains. Travelers seldom come this way. The old maps are no use. Things have changed for the worse, and the road is unguarded. They have seldom even heard of the king around here, and less inquisitive you are to go along, the less trouble you are likely to find, some said. After all, there are 14 of us. Others said, "Where has Gandalf gone to?" This remark was repeated by everybody. Then the rain began to pour down worse than ever, and Oin and Gloin began to fight. That settled it. "After all, we have gotten a burglar with us," they said, so they made off, leading their ponies, with all due and proper caution, in the direction of the light. They came to the hill and soon in the wood. Up the hill they went, but there was no proper path to be seen, such as might lead to horse or farm, or what they could make of the deal of rustling and cracking and creaking, and good deal of grumbling and draughting, as they went through the trees in the dark pitch. Suddenly, the red light shone out very bright through the tree trunks not far ahead. "Now it's the burglar's turn," they said, meaning Bilbo. "Now you must go and find out about that light and what it's for, and if it's all perfectly safe and canny," said Thorn to the Hobbit. "Now scuttle off and come back quick, if all is well. If not, come back if you can. If you can't, hoot twice like a barn owl, and once like a screech owl, and we will do what we can." Anybody knows the difference between those two? Because I sure as hell want it. Off Bilbo had to go before he could explain that he could not even hoot once like any kind of owl anymore that could fly like a bat. But at any rate, hobbits can move quietly in the woods. Absolutely quietly. They took pride in it, and Bilbo had sniffed more than once of what he called all this dwarvish racket. As they went along, he thought, I don't suppose you or I would have noticed anything at all on a windy night, not if the whole cavalcade had passed 2 feet off. As for Bilbo walking primely towards the red light, I don't suppose even a weasel would have stirred a whisker at it. So naturally he got right up to the fire, for fire it was, without disturbing anyone. And this is what he saw. Should I save the rest? I'm gonna go for a paragraph or two, because we're almost at the 30-minute mark. And since Robbie kept interrupting, I'll keep going. 3 very large persons sitting around a very large fire of beech logs. They were toasting mutton on long spits of wood and licking the gravy off with their fingers. There was a fine, toothsome smell, and there was a barrel of good drink at hand, and they were drinking out of jugs. But they were trolls. Obviously trolls. Even Bilbo, in spite of his sheltered life, could see that, from the great heavy faces of them, and their size, and the shape of their legs. Not to mention their language, which was not drawing room fashion at all. Mutton yesterday, mutton today, and blimey if we don't look like mutton again tomorrow, said one of the trolls. Never a blinking bit of man flesh have we for long enough, said the second. What the hell, William was a thinking to bring... Oh, wow, this is so... Okay. What the hell, William was a thinking to bring us to these parts at all beats me. And the drink running short, what's more? He said, jogging up the elbow of William, who's taking a pull at his jug. Whew. William choked. Shut your mouth, he said as soon as he could. You can't expect folk to stop here forever just to eat the bayou and Bert. You ate at a village and half between you. Since we come down from the mountains, how much more do you want? And time's been up our way when you have said thank you, Biddle, for a nice old fat valley mutton like it is. He took a big bite of sheep's leg that he was roasting, and wiped his lips with his sleeves. This is tricky. All right, I'm going to finish this page. I'll finish this page. Yes, I am afraid trolls do behave like that, even those with only 1 head each. After hearing all this, Bilbo ought to have done something at once. Either he should have gone back quietly and warned his friends that there was 3 fair-sized trolls at hand in nasty mood, quite likely to roast dwarf, or even pony for that change, or else he should have gone down a bit of good quick burglary. A really first-class and legendary burglar would at this point pick the troll's pockets. It is nearly always worthwhile, if you can manage it. Pinched the very mutton off the spits, purloined the beer, and walked off without them noticing him. Other more practical but less professional pride would have perhaps taken a dagger into each of them before they observed it. Then the night could have been spent cheerfully. Bilbo knew it. He had read a good many things he had never seen or done. He was much alarmed, and well as disgusted. He wished himself 100 miles away, and yet somehow he could not go straight back to Thorn and Company empty-handed. So he stood, and he hesitated in the shadows. Of the various burglarious proceedings, he had heard the pickings of the troll's pockets seemed the least difficult, so at least he crept up behind a tree, just behind William. That's where I'll save it. We will pick it up with Bilbo's encounter with the trolls tomorrow. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it so much. Robbie ran off to get a snack or something. He's 8. His attention span, I'm lucky, could last this long. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you tune in again for the next one. I'm enjoying it. I hope you are too. Good night.